Advanced Studio Classroom is on the air. Join us today as we go down to the Cajun Bayou. You are listening to Advanced Studio Classroom. My name is Brandon, and it is May 3rd. Today we begin our food article, and this is one of my favorite topics to discuss, so I'm happy to be here. And I have two panelists that also, I'm sure, enjoy eating all different types of food. First, welcome Linda.
Hello. Yes, I do love eating all different types of food.
Just right off the bat, what is one of your favorite types of food?
Thai food comes to mind because I recently had a lot of Thai food.
You were in Thailand? Mm-hmm. Oh, they have great food at a really good price.
They do.
It's worth going just
so
for the
delicious.
Food.
Yeah.
It is. Very fresh, right?
Exactly.
You see that difference there. Okay, and we also have David Morton in the house.
Hey!
Welcome, David. And what is your favorite dish that you just can't wait to dig into?
Oh, man. I actually really like Vietnamese food a whole lot. And, it's kind of similar to, it's not similar to Cajun food at all, but it also is a kind of food that comes from...
But it is food.
It is food. Number one, it's food. Number two, a lot of things are foods that people came up with just from having to survive, close to rivers or bays or... areas with water where they just had to find whatever was there and cook with.
Yeah, there are foods that are still around to this day that were kind of concocted during war times, and people didn't have much money, and they can still stick around after all these years. So, you never know. Food has a lot of history, and we are in the United States in this article, in the southern part of the U.S., in the state of Louisiana. Now, what is the title of our article, David?
Cajun Bayou Food Trail Tour. I said that weird.
Yeah. No, you said it wonderfully. It draws us in. What is a bayou, Linda?
A bayou is a body of water, so it can be like a stream or a small river, and it often has marshes and a lot of plant life.
It's kind of the side of the main river, right? Mm-hmm. And we see these in the southern part of the U.S., especially here in Louisiana. Now, Louisiana is a unique state because they have a different culture, this Cajun culture. And a Cajun is a person who lives in the U.S. state of Louisiana and is related, or whose relations, rather, in the past were French-speaking Canadians. And so we know in Quebec that is a French-speaking province in Canada, but some of the people in Canada who were French-speaking moved down to Louisiana, and those people are known as Cajuns, and they have their own culture. And also, we think of Cajun food, don't we?
Yeah. And those people that moved down from Canada, the original settlers were called the Acadians. I believe that maybe where the word Cajun comes from. But Louisiana was also originally owned by the French, and there was this thing called the Louisiana Purchase. But one of the fun facts about Louisiana is that if you look here on your map on page 12, the state has a funny shape, right? It's shaped like a boot. So people sometimes talk about Louisiana as being like a boot.
Or like an L.
Yeah, or like an L. Yeah, like an L.
Yes, but it's shaped like a boot.
Kind of like a boot, yeah.
Right, yeah, that's cool. That is neat. It helps you to remember that. So we are on page 12 today, and we are taking a tour, going on a food trail tour. And it is described in our deck as a delectable food tour that mixes cuisine and culture. What does that word delectable mean?
It means delicious.
All right. Well, I hope that you are ready for this tour. Open your magazine to page 12 or follow along on your digital device as we have our first reading there through line 11.
Cajun Bayou Food Trail Tour. This delectable food tour mixes cuisine and culture. One Louisiana parish is doing its part to keep alive for visitors the special appeal of Cajun cuisine and the unique culture that surrounds it. Located about an hour's drive south of New Orleans, Lafourche Parish is a 1,500 square mile swath of saltwater marshes, bayous, and crossroads communities. It is a region authentically and unapologetically Cajun to its roots, going all the way back to its 17th century settlement as a district of New France.
All right, are you guys ready for this tour?
Oh, yeah.
We are.
All right, we are going down to a parish. Now, what is a parish?
Well, it is a county, and in other states you just call it a county, so a defined area of the state.
In Louisiana, they have this special name for a county called a parish. And this particular parish is down in the southern part of Louisiana. If you have your magazine in front of you, you can see the map there. And you see a box around the parish there. And then we zoom in on that, and we see that below where we have the state. You see an outline of the parish there. And what's the name of this particular parish, David?
It is the Lafourche Parish.
Wow, you said that so nicely. Sounds kind of French, doesn't it? Right?
Yeah, I believe it is.
Yeah. All right. So this particular parish is doing its part to keep alive for visitors the special appeal of Cajun cuisine and the unique culture that surrounds it. So we are digging into this, going on this tour. Where is this parish located, Linda?
It is located south of New Orleans, and it is a 1,500 square mile swath of saltwater marshes, bayous, and crossroads communities.
All right. Before we get into more details about this parish here in Louisiana, we have to talk about New Orleans. It is a famous city, of course, in the United States and especially in the state of Louisiana. Have either of you been there?
I have not.
I have.
All right.
Yeah, actually, I just remembered now that I was in New Orleans for one night, or a night and a day, and it is very, very beautiful.
Yeah.
There was also there was a terrible hurricane around there.
Katrina.
Hurricane Katrina. But they have really rebuilt amazingly. But that aside, it's a beautiful city full of culture. I mean, there's just music everywhere.
Yes, it's known for its music, right? And of course, food.
Yeah.
There's lots you can just walk around and eat at different places, I guess. I haven't been there yet. I've been to Louisiana, but not to New Orleans. I'd love to go because I want to eat the food and take in the culture. Is something I think is really different. America has different cultures within it, and this is a very unique culture.
And also, New Orleans is known for Mardi Gras, which is the big party that they have every year.
Yeah, maybe you would want to go at some other time of the year. It's kind of crowded then. I would recommend going at a different time of the year. But anyway, we get a description here of this parish. It's a 1,500 square mile swath. A swath is just a long, thin area of land. And, or here in this case of marshes. What is a saltwater marsh, David Morton?
Yeah, I'm not an expert on this, but I believe a saltwater marsh is just an area where the seawater kind of drains into an area and maybe mixes a bit with some of the rivers and kind of is settled enough to allow its own environment to grow up.
Yeah, it's just basically flat, wet ground. And it's oftentimes or sometimes covered by salt water or contains salt water. So next we see that it also has bayous, which we talked about, and crossroads communities, Linda. We know about communities, but this term crossroads, what is that referring to?
It's a small, usually rural community that's situated between two or more roads at an intersection of roads.
All right, so you have these communities throughout, and it is a region authentically and unapologetically Cajun. Now, when you say you're unapologetic about something, you're proud to be that, right?
Right. You're proud to be it, and you're not going to change it for anybody.
That's right. Unapologetically Cajun to its roots. You know, you think of the roots of a tree, that goes down deep, right? And it's the idea here is the beginning of something.
Yeah.
So going all the way back to its 17th century settlement as a district of New France, we discussed earlier, Cajuns are referring to French-speaking Canadians. So here is that reference to that settlement. All right, well, we have much more to learn about the Food Trail Tour. We'll get into our next reading now. We're on page 12, and we're going to read down through the rest of the page.
Seeking a plan designed to promote its wealth of Cajun eateries, the Parish Tourist Office, Louisiana's Cajun Bayou Tourism, launched the Cajun Bayou Food Trail. The trail is comprised of 18 restaurants and 6 festivals and events, all of which focus on helping visitors understand how the region's food and culture are so deliciously and forever intertwined. Here along the bayou, Cajuns use what's around them, pulling from the water and plucking from the land to find the freshest ingredients. And then they tend to mix it all together in one big pot, says Timothy Bush, President and CEO of Louisiana's Cajun Bayou Tourism. Our food has a story that's rooted in traditions and expressed by the wonderful storytellers who own and operate restaurants along the trail.
All right, the tourist office here in this particular parish in Louisiana was trying to come up with a plan to promote the culture and the food there. And so they wanted to show people the wealth of Cajun eateries that they have.
Yeah, and I think it's really beautiful because this area being so far south of New Orleans, a whole hour, it would easily get passed over. So in order to kind of make that kind of in order to promote that, they had to sort of do it as like all these places together, right? So then they put together this Cajun Bayou Food Trail.
Yeah, so they have this whole food trail. There's, I believe, 22 stops, not necessarily all restaurants we see here in the line 16. There are 18 restaurants, and there are 6 festivals and events. And so there's a lot to do. It's not just food. There are other things that you can be involved with. Those festivals, though, may actually just be more food, but not necessarily.
And there's nothing wrong with
restaurant.
that.
You can't get enough food, right?
Yeah, can't get enough food.
Well, anyway. Well, they're seeking a plan to do this, and they launched the Food Trail Tour. The trail is comprised of 18 restaurants and 6 festivals and events, as I said, all of which focus on helping visitors understand how the region's food and culture are so deliciously and forever intertwined. Isn't that beautifully written?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And what does it mean if something is intertwined, Linda?
It's connected, often twisted together, so it's hard to separate. So they're both connected very closely.
Isn't that really true? You think of the culture from which you come from, and there are certain foods that just are intertwined with that, right?
Yeah. I mean, I can think of many examples in so many cultures. Well, I mean, like here on the island, there are many different foods that, like when you eat them, sometimes people will tell you this stories about like, oh, like my grandmother had this recipe when she came over to the island, right? And they used to make it back where they were from, you know what I mean, on the mainland. And so it's like this whole story of a family that has traveled from one place to another and brought this food with them. And so when they eat that food, they remember the story of that food.
Yeah, and that's wonderful. I don't know who came up with the stinky tofu thing and the story behind that. That's a different one, but a lot of people love that too, and that could be comfort food.
Exactly.
A lot of people. Yeah.
And in most cultures, food is very much an integral part of it. And there's like foods that represent certain occasions that like you eat a certain type of food during a certain time, like Chinese New Year. There's certain foods that you always eat or that's very traditional to eat, and it represents the culture.
That's right. And so that is very special. And here along the bayou, we see in the next paragraph, Cajuns use what's around them, pulling from the water and plucking from the land to find the freshest ingredients. And so that's a key phrase there, fresh ingredients. We talked about, Linda, how you recently visited Thailand, and the food there can be really fresh, and you notice the difference. And I think with any food, that's an important part, is it fresh?
Right. Yeah. Even for Vietnamese food, which David mentioned, like I think like Vietnamese food is fresh. Like, I mean, if it's good, like it has to be fresh.
Yeah.
That's
And then another
part.
key point about Cajun food is this next line in line 23. Then they tend to mix it all together in one big pot. And we see some pictures of that, and that's what we see kind of, is a lot of things mixed together. I love that. I love having different ingredients. I love casseroles, which, have a lot of different food and a lot of different ingredients in it. And that's what we see here, is they just mix a lot of things together, and I think there's a better chance of having some nice flavors involved when you do that.
Yeah, and it's also easier to feed large groups of people at once, right? I think, and I know that I watched a couple of just little miniature documentary things on Cajun culture a little bit earlier today, and they're very, very family-oriented. Very much about everyone coming together and eating from this one big pot,
All right. Well, we just heard that quote from Timothy Bush, who's the president and CEO of Louisiana's Cajun Bayou Tourism. It goes on to say, our food has a story that's rooted in traditions. So earlier we saw that, we talked about unapologetically Cajun to its roots, and roots meaning the beginnings, basically. Here we have the phrase rooted in, Linda.
Right. So its origins, or it's originated in traditions. That's where it comes from.
All right. And it's also expressed by the wonderful storytellers who own and operate restaurants along the trail. And so I guess you can go enjoy some nice Cajun food and hear the story behind, maybe their culture, the food, the restaurant, or something.
Yeah, and many of these people may also have just great stories about how they started the restaurant, or the way that they, who gave them this particular recipe. And it's funny, some folks will have certain special spice mixtures that they guard as like very precious secrets, Someone has a special spice mixture that they use for their jambalaya, and they won't tell anybody, and you guys have really interesting characters like that as well.
All right. Speaking of that, maybe your families have some special food, like it's a family recipe they won't give out to other people. Do you guys have a dish like that? Maybe your mom or your grandma makes, Linda?
Not really, but there are recipes that have been lost because nobody learned it from my grandmother or, our grandparents. So now we don't know how to make it, and we can't eat it anymore.
No.
Yeah.
How about you, David?
Yeah, well, it's kind of a similar thing. There's a lot of things that my mom has started writing down from my grandmother.
Yeah.
Because she's, getting older, and they're realizing like, oh, wait a minute, she's the only person who knows how to make this special sweet potato thing, or this, this special recipe for greens, collard greens, right?
Collard greens.
Yeah, in order to keep those things from being lost, we have to.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a good
write it
southern
down.
dish, collard greens.
Oh, yeah.
Well, my mom makes something called butter roll, and it's basically what it sounds like. It's something that is extremely, extremely sweet, and it involves biscuits and I guess lots of butter and milk. And maybe sugar. I'm not sure what all is included, but I've never seen that anywhere else. I don't know if that's a family recipe or where that exactly came from. I just know it's good, and I like to eat it, but you can't eat a lot at one time because it's extremely sweet. Well, we all can think of maybe some family recipes that we enjoy, but it's also good to try some new foods. And for most of us here in the studio, and maybe for most of us listening, that would be us trying the Cajun food. I haven't tried very much, and I would like to go down to this parish in Louisiana on this food trail tour. And that's good news because we are about to hit the trail. In our last reading today, we move over to page 13, and we're going to read just the left-hand column.
Almost time to hit the trail. I was pleased to accept an invitation from Bush and staff members Melissa Durocher and Kelly Walters to take a spin along the trail shortly after its inauguration last May. This wouldn't be my first visit to Cajun country. My appetite was nonetheless primed for this return visit, with taste buds tingling in anticipation of such down-home delights as gumbo, etouffee, jambalaya, boiled crab and crawfish, red beans and rice, po' boys, and pecan pralines. Most of the 18 restaurants in the Cajun Bayou Food Trail are strung out along Louisiana Highway 1.
All right, so the writer of this article, Dave Hauser, says that he was pleased to accept an invitation from Bush and staff members. Bush is Timothy Bush. He's the president and CEO of the Cajun Bayou Tourism there in Louisiana. And so they invited him to come along. And also there's some staff members there who invited him and so forth. And they are going to take a spin along the trail shortly after its inauguration. That's what happened. Now, I like this phrase, take a spin, Linda.
When you take a ride, it's usually a short ride, and it's for fun.
Yeah.
All right. So that's what they were doing. And now we have this word inauguration. We use that. Maybe I think of an inaugural season of maybe a new team, a new baseball team or something. What is inauguration in this sense?
In this sense, inauguration is just that it just opened up, and these are the first time they're going to offer this experience to other people, right? So it's kind of their opening celebration almost.
All right, and so it's kind of the official start to something, and so this started last May. But this wouldn't be the first time that Dave Hauser went to Cajun country, but he was ready. His appetite was nonetheless primed, Linda.
Right, yeah, he was ready to taste some more Cajun food, and his taste buds were tingling in anticipation of all of the Cajun delights that he was going to eat.
All right. Tingling, David.
Oh, yeah. I mean, okay, so
How can your taste buds tingle?
Oh, man, well, when your taste buds, when you can, so Cajun food, I've had several of the things that they talk about here, and the flavors that they use in Cajun foods, the different spices, like the spiciness of it also. They're very savory. They're spicy. Like they're things that, like, when you think about what these things might taste like, you can just sort of your mouth is sort of watering, your tongue is ready to receive the flavor. This symphony of flavor that is
so
about
excited.
to happen to your mouth.
Well described. So he's super excited to eat this food, basically. He's anticipating it. And he describes it with a phrase that I love. He says, down home delights, Linda.
So it's like something that you would, home-cooked food.
Yeah, and even thinking of like maybe a rural area or a small town, you can maybe describe a person that way, I guess. They're really, or we often say down to earth, meaning that they're really relatable. But here, down home has kind of that country feel, right? You wouldn't really use that with maybe someone in a city. It's not really a down home feel because it's kind of more sophisticated. This is a more laid back feel. So he describes them as down home delights. Another word that Linda used, kind of home-cooked, I think is really what he's getting at too. And he goes through a list of them. These are famous dishes, famous Cajun dishes. The first one is gumbo. And we have a picture of that there on page 13 at the top there where it says fresh homemade gumbo. That looks delicious. What's the next dish called, David Morton?
Étouffée.
Wow, that sounds fancy.
Yeah, I love saying that word.
We have a picture of crawfish étouffée there over rice. And then what about jambalaya, Linda? Have you had that before?
I've had a version of jambalaya, but I don't think it was like the real deal. But it's a rice dish, and it can have different type of meat in it, and seasoned with herbs. But yeah, it's supposed to be quite tasty.
Well, the next one is something that I'm a little bit more familiar with. Well, actually, I'm talking about po' boys. That's really not the next one, but that's the next highlighted word we have. But before that, I guess we should back up a minute. It says boiled crab and crawfish. That sounds good, doesn't it? And we have a Louisiana crawfish boil, a picture of that there on page 13 as well. And then we have red beans and rice.
Those
and
are really good.
Po' boys. I can't wait to get to that. I got us so excited I jumped ahead. What in the world is a po' boy?
Po' boys it's a type of sandwich, right? It's a type of sandwich on like a thicker piece of bread. And they're just usually, I had a friend who made them for me. His family is from New Orleans. He was from L.A. He made them with fried fish. And he had a special mixture that he used, with spices, and then you put the batter on the fish you fry, and then you put he would make a special sauce, right? And then you would take that and put that in on the bread with some vegetables, and then put the fish in there, and then there was a po' boy. It's very simple, but it's amazing.
Oh, I don't know about you guys, but I think we need to cut the program short because I'm getting really hungry. That sounds great, but we can't go quite yet. We also have pecan pralines is the way I would say it. There's different ways to say it. You can also say praline. And I got some of those when I was just back in the States, and they were just simply amazing. They had like cinnamon and brown sugar on them.
Oh, man.
And on pecans, and they were just delicious.
It's very sweet.
Super sweet.
Super sweet, yeah.
Which is excellent. Well, most of the 18 restaurants on the Cajun Bayou Food Trail are strung out along Louisiana Highway 1. If something is strung out along, it's in a long line with some spaces in between each one. And so it may take a few minutes to get from place to place. But on this tour, you can enjoy all 18 restaurants. Well, we have more to talk about tomorrow, so come back for day 2 of our food article, and we'll go back down to Cajun country in southern Louisiana. Until then, this is Brandon,
Linda,
and Dave
saying goodbye.
See you later.